Welcome back to all the viewers of The Full Life out there. We are so happy you're joining us again. And to all the new viewers out there, we want to talk especially to you for a minute because we want to tell you that this is the show for you. We know there's a lot going on out in the world. Coronavirus is surging in many states across the country again. So many people are still in isolation and have been there for months. We know the protests are going on out there to try and combat racial injustices. Anything that you're going through, any frustration, any hurt you're feeling, this is the place where you can feel the love of Christ and you can feel people coming together from all different walks of Christianity to come together united as the body of Christ and to build each other up. So with that said, let's start. We need some manna moments today, guys, because we need some good stuff to keep our eyes focused on. There's a lot going on in the world, so we want to uplift some people today. So welcome back, our panel, Hank.
Hey, everyone. Good to be here.
And Jenny.
Glad to be back.
And Carolyn.
So good to see everybody.
All right. Well, we have a special guest here today. Jenny, tell us who it is.
Well, I am very, very privileged to introduce our special guest for the program today. He is a husband, a good husband, a wonderful father. He is a world changer, and I know that. He is the co-pastor of and the founder of Revive Church Auburn, which is in the Seattle area. He is a spiritual son to me and my husband. He is someone that will keep you laughing, but will stir your spirits for the things of the Lord. He is one of the most passionate, on fire, God-loving, God-fearing people that I know, but he is also very real. We have Pastor Josh Headley joining us today.
Hey, come on.
Woo, and the crowd went wild.
I like to tell people we're having a good time because sometimes you ask them and you never hear. So I just like to let people know we are having a good time. We're having a good time.
We are.
It's a very Tim Story moment. We're having a good time now. Here.
Well, Josh, one of the segments we've been doing on the show, we call Manna Moments. And those are those moments that are, moments of grace, moments that we know God showed up this week, things to be thankful for and focus on, because especially in these times where there's a lot of trials going on and a lot distracting our minds, we're trying to stay focused on some of those blessings and graces that God gives us. That being said, who's got a moment? Josh, maybe I'll start with you today since you're our guest today.
Well, I want to start with something small. I believe when we're blessed, we need to recognize the small things. And so I'm the type of guy that gets excited when I get the first parking spot at Costco. But today, man, I went through Starbucks and blessed the young lady at the front. She missed the drink just by a little bit and said, oh, well, we'll make you another one and give you a free one. So I'm just saying, I'm lighting it up. My morning started with 2 Starbuckses. The Bible says 2 is greater than 1. So I'm going with 2 Starbucks.
Is that like 2 are gathered in his name, like 2 Starbucks and Jesus is there?
2 lattes in his name. We're there in the
If you
middle.
ask someone from Seattle, the answer is definitely yes. Those people are obsessed with coffee.
If you look at the original Greek, Jesus' name is coffee. I did see that.
We're not going to go there.
Carolyn.
Well, I had just an incredible week. For the past year, and I asked my son before I did this because I would never want to cross a line, but I've got a really incredible son who's extremely bright, but he has fought and overcome so much. When he was younger, got told lots of things like he would never be able to do certain things and all this stuff. I want to keep this very light, but we never told him. And we just thought, no, we're not going to allow the world to put any labels on you. You are victorious. You are God's child, and you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And whatever God calls you to do, he's going to give you the grace to do it. I don't need labels on you to do this. And so in this process, we're coming down to the ACT test. And we were trying to get his 504 to be put into the ACT so he could take his test with the extra time that he needs. And 3 times we've went in to take this test and they have denied us the extra time. And man, I've left there so heavy in my heart, going, God, what do I need to do? I mean, I've called to speak with people. You know how a mama, we begin to fight. You know, I got on the phone with her and she said, you know what? She says, I don't even know if they're going to take the ACT. And at this point, I'm so exhausted. I'm like, God, well, God's in control. I'm just telling the woman on the phone, you know, I just have to trust God. She said, you were the first person that has not yelled at me or cussed me out this week when I've told him that. And I'm like, well, honey, it's not your fault. So she goes, well, you've only got 12 hours. She said, but if you'll have him write a letter, she said, I'll see what I can do. And so I just went to prayer. I know many of us, I mean, it seems like God can sometimes be that 11th hour God. You all know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, God, I'm down to where I've done all that I can do. And it's that but God moment. And I got an email from her and I could still choke up last minute. And she just said, I want you to know I've approved him for this time. And I'm telling you all something. I just keep saying later, but not late. You know, we might think that God is like, are you hearing me? You're so silent. What are you doing? We're down to the last minute. And God's saying, no, I'm going to show you that it's nothing about you, that it's all about me. And so that's my manna moment for this week, man. I am rejoicing all the way. I mean, this is a thing. I'm telling you, it is a miracle of God. It really is. So
I love
right.
that.
He is moving a lot in this week. Jenny.
Yeah, I just love that. Of course, being a mama and a mama of a senior, Carolyn, I'm right there with you. And, you know, my son Gabriel had a little bit of a rough time with his high school career. We moved to Israel when he was right before junior high. And so, you know, getting them back assembly, you know, back into school and the schedules and all that, we chose a charter school so we could still travel a lot. And unfortunately, when he was a freshman and a sophomore, he was sort of a guinea pig in the school. They were the first years. And man, he struggled. And this kid has had to make up classes for things that teachers messed up, times where they forgot to grade things, like stuff that I helped him turn in, you know, that they said, you know, wasn't done. And so we've really battled with this kid. And my son wants to go to work for NASA. That's his dream. And so, you know, that GPA has got to be good. And, you know, getting into, you know, good college is all that's important. So I'm just really proud to say, just to make it a long story short, he's doing really well. He just finished last night his very last course of his high school career. And he finished 2 weeks early, and he has straight A's. So that was for us as a mom and dad, you know, so proud, done early, straight A's. And it looks like he's going to be able to go to the college of his choice. Wow. One of the colleges of his choices that he's looking at. So very big moment.
That is a good feeling.
Come on.
Well, speaking of graduation, we do want to acknowledge, even though they didn't get to physically walk across the stage on the show, Carolyn and Jenny are proud mamas of 2 graduates. So we say congratulations to Preston and to Gabriel.
yay!
With that said, Josh is here for another reason.
Woo, Josh!
We have been celebrating people and organizations and churches that are becoming the Church of Action. And he is doing just that in the Seattle area. Jenny, take it away.
This Revive Cares, you've made some interesting decisions. First of all, regarding the summer, I love that you talked. We talked yesterday about some of your choices regarding the summer, what you're going to do and how you're going to put your focus on people and not a place. And that really ties in with Revive Cares. So will you tell us more about Revive Cares? What started that? What started the journey? Because so many pastors start thinking about the building and building their church, but you really have put into building the community. Talk to us about that.
As a church, when quarantine hit, Washington State was actually the number one city or the number one state at the time to get hit with the virus. And so our governor, you know, along with the health officials and leaders of our community, put some really tight, stringent, guidelines for us as a community. And so a week before they even implemented it, we decided we were no longer gonna be in a building. We were a mobile church, and we just said, you know what, let's get a jump start on this, and let's start focusing on what we need to do. And as a church, about 4 or 5 weeks into quarantine season, we started realizing, yes, things are going to open up. Obviously, it's going to be in phases, but it's going to be a long time before, as a church, we can meet at full capacity. And so rather than kind of just living for this dream of like almost like the Israelites did, where we dream of leeks and onions of Egypt, and we dream of gathering together live, we're like, let's stop focusing on the past, because this quarantine kind of makes you think that way. It makes you keep looking at what things were rather than what it could be. And so we made the decision that regardless of how they open up, our ability to worship and our ability to gather, we were going to suspend services through the summer, but instead on Sundays, gather at a different place, different location, and serve our community in different ways. And so we developed a program called Revive Cares, and it's all about mobilizing our people to be the church on a Sunday. And so we do it the same time frame as what a church service would be. So we meet 10:30 at a different location, and we serve at the food bank, we serve at the hospitals, at the fire departments, wherever it may be. But it's all about getting ourselves out there to care for our community, because nobody really cares what you have to say until they actually know how you care.
Tell us about some of the diversity in projects you guys have done, because it's been quite a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, I believe God is a creative God. And I think one thing with churches is, I said this on our podcast with Jenny, but I've been taught that when the horse is dead, dismount. And so I believe you shouldn't stick on an idea for too long. And so we've been really trying to keep the idea spiced. So this weekend, we're contacting food and restaurant businesses to give them business, but we're doing it through DoorDash. And so when they come to our door, we're blessing every DoorDash worker that comes to our door all Sunday. And we're going to be giving them a $50 cash and then blessing them. And we're going to do this to as many DoorDash people as we possibly can, because they're essential. And we've been joking that they're the forgotten essential workers. Everyone wants to do fire departments and that because they're special. But we're like, no, let's bless the forgotten essential workers, because we know we all been DoorDashing food. And those guys have been coming to people's doors where there maybe has been the virus or whatnot. So we want to bless them. But we have adopted an entire neonatal unit where there's moms that were there, and we celebrated there for Mother's Day. We've adopted fire departments. We had 5 fire departments we just adopted last week. We adopt our food bank. We try to get out there and do as much as we can for each category that is represented in our community.
I love it because, the whole saying is we are the church. That's just the building we meet in, but we are the church, and it feels like you're just being the hands and feet of Christ, which I just love. I also heard that you did something really special for the mamas. Can you share that with us? Yeah.
So 2.5 years ago, my wife gave birth to our first son, little Aldrich Headley. We call him Ollie. He's a champion. He's a crazy, crazy boy. He's becoming world famous with his Ollie and the grilled cheese video that we do. We get jokes that people want to watch that more than our sermons, so I don't know how that happened. But he's a special boy, but he was born at 27 weeks, 5 days. And he was 1 pound, 4 ounces, and just a miracle baby. And we were put in a NICU unit for him to develop and to grow. And we were sitting there just asking God, hey, what should we do, man, for Mother's Day? Obviously, we have our own mothers here in our community, but how do we bless both? And so we created a 2-phase idea. We said, well, we can spend money on our own moms, or we can bless these moms who are having to stay in the hospital with maybe their first child in a very intense situation. And one of our co-founders, Pastor Mars, was like, let's go bless the NICU. And so we adopted every single mom, over 50 moms in the NICU. We gave them cash so they could buy a nice meal for their family, and gave them a card that was handwritten, hand signed, and addressed to them, just encouraging them and giving them encouragement. And then on the other end, we got our entire team together on Mother's Day to visit every single mom in our church and did a flash mob at their location and gifted them. And so it was a fun, power-packed Mother's Day.
You're getting into fire departments, NICUs. Just talk to us a little bit about how you're forming these partnerships and maintaining them for these ideas.
I wanted to be in favor with people of influence. I believe that we see that model with Joseph, and we see it with so many people in the Bible. Even Jesus, he really didn't care about what the religious leaders thought of him, but he sat with centurions and governmental officials. We see him with so many different people teaching and preaching to them. And so we kind of came with that model that we were going to pursue and love the city officials and the leaders of our community, that we wanted to be at the table with the mayor. We wanted to be at the table with our principals and with our superintendents and with our fire departments and with our police. And, so when we first came to Auburn, I did 300 meetings in about a 100-day period. And we were doing 3 a day, and it was with every leader in the community.
Wow.
And we'd sit and I'd buy breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I ate out and got really fat. It was really hard on my health, but I met a lot of cool people. But what was so interesting, what transpired is not everybody we became friends with, but there was a core group of about 40 or 50 people in the community that we created relationship with, we became friends with. And to say that the opportunities we have today to reach out, to minister, and to be involved in people's lives is not connected to that 100-day period would be an understatement. That is how it has come about. And so now there's open door, there's relationship. And I think so many times we as churches and organizations try to bypass the relationship and just get to the opportunity. And people can see through self-promotion. And so it was so interesting as we came and just say, we're here to help. How can we help it? We started with the mayor. I remember meeting her and I walked up to her and I said, Mayor Backus, it's so good to meet you. My name is Josh. I'm a pastor of Revive. How can our church serve you? Can you give me 3 projects that have been on your table? What can we do? And slowly but surely, we've been developing relationship. We're now monthly. We host what's called a faith leader meeting. We gather all 55 faith leaders from every religion. We're not just Christian pastors, every religion. And we sit at a table with our mayor and discuss the needs that we can do to help the community. And this is how we've been doing it. This is how we've been going about it. The response has been amazing. And I think it's due to the fact that we came with relationship, not with a message, not with a sermon, not with an agenda, not with self-promotion, but truly saying, we want to be a friend and we want to be a neighbor. How can we do that?
That's awesome.
I want to ask you about what's ahead. You and I had a great conversation yesterday, which just so excited me, because as we talked about, you made the choice to not pour the resources into a building over the summer during the virus time, but to pour it into people. And because you made that choice, God really just blessed you so big. You had a phone call yesterday that I would love for you to share with the people about something incredible that's coming out of all this and how you're moving it forward. So just share that with us.
I appreciate that. There's an African proverb that I love, and it says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And when we came to Auburn, we didn't want to just go fast. We wanted to go far, and we wanted to go deep into the heart of this community and help people. And so through these relationships, we've been doing the different Revive Cares each week and helping and investing and taking what we would have invested in a building and said, we're going to put this back into the community and invest in them. And we got an opportunity that came across our table where the mayor's office reached out to us and said, hey, there's some grant money available. There's some boxed goods that are being shipped out. Would you kind of manage this project and figure out how to get it done? And there's a lot of moving parts to it. And so I just started emailing who are my friends now. And that's the thing. 3 years ago, these were people that didn't know who I was. 3 years now, they're friends. They're neighbors. They know when I'm sick or when my family's in the hospital, they're friends. And so I emailed them and just said, hey, here's the opportunity on the table. How can we make this work? And so over the last 2 days, we've been in Zoom meetings with the mayor, with city officials, with the head of major corporations in our region. And it's so cool. It's getting ready to transpire. So next Sunday, we are starting what will be about a 3 to 6 month feeding program in our community. We have a tire shopping complex there called the Outlet Collection. And it's a huge space with, tons of anchor stores like Nordstrom's and Nike and those kind of things. And we are partnering with Dave & Buster's, and the head of Dave & Buster's looked at me and said, Josh, we give you our building. You can put some sort of food bank or something in there. You can have our freezers. You can have our party rooms to organize food. The Outlet Collection said you can have our parking lots. You can set up a drive-through experience. And then we're partnering with another group called Pacific Coast Fruits here in the Northwest, and they got a $24 million grant to supply food. And so we're going to be supplying 1,000. We're starting with 1,000 meals this weekend. We know it's probably going to be given out extremely fast, but we're just trying to gauge it. But every family will get 85 pounds of food, 3 different boxes with dairy, with fruits and vegetables, with meat, with cheese. It's enough to feed a family of 4 for a week. And we're going to be giving out 1,000 of these starting next Sunday. And as it grows, just seeing so many people be able to get help and be able to get the resources they need with the unemployment, with so many things that have been happening to our families. I know my wife was laid off, and we've experienced the pressure of finances. That this is such a resource for people to help them survive, but not just survive. We even talked about on our podcast, Jenny, help them thrive. It is relationship, It is partnering together, and it is coming together. I just want to say this to so many churches and leaders and, people of God. Stop trying to always just be against systems and structure. So many people are so upset with how government has come at them with this coronavirus and said, we can't do ministry. We can't do this. I have felt this has been the greatest season for ministry. But it's all on how you look at it. You can look at your mayor and your governor as the enemy, or you can look them at the gatekeeper and a resource for you to access more and more people. And we did that, and we're starting to see those doors open. And so I just encourage you today, if you have not reached out to your city officials, if you don't know your city council and your mayor, make it your goal next week to email all of them and set up a meeting and love on them and encourage them, because that is where we get to a place that we can really help and influence people.
Well, and Josh, the blessing, I want to say this, that came to you as well from that is they basically, so you chose not to put money into a building, but to put money into people. Yeah. And now they've given you this Dave & Buster's and given you the parking lot and said, oh yeah, go ahead and have drive-in services for free. You don't have to pay for anything. Have your services and then give people the food to give out. So you're able to actually do the services anyway. And I love that because God is so faithful in that way for you to say, I'm not even going to worry about that. I'm going to let God worry about that. And he took care of it for you.
Yeah. And if I can add something to that, that scripture, it says the greatest amongst you is the servant of all.
Yeah.
It gets me so fired up because we get into ministry sometimes thinking we're going to serve and we end up having servants. But man, when I hear you, man, you're out serving people. And, my father was a homeless man, and it was because of a meal that a man came and gave my father a meal, changed his life. He accepted Jesus. It broke all the curse off our family.
Wow.
And, I have chills just even speaking about it because I know the power of what you're doing. Yeah. And I just wonder, do you have any stories of lives that have been changed since you've started this?
There's a young man, I call him a young man, he's a little bit older, maybe a young man. He came to us, and he's our sound and engineer now, but he came to me and he was definitely down in life, had gone through a divorce, had gone through some hard seasons in life. And we started just reaching out, loving on him, being with him. And he was an atheist. And I never forget him telling me, I don't believe in what you believe in. That's fine. I believe in you, and we'll go from there. And to see him and his wife get baptized in our church and make a commitment for Christ and move forward has been incredible. We've been getting emails and messages from people. There's this one lady, your brain starts to cramp with so many, success stories, but there's this one lady, I'm not going to say her name, but she's a mom of 4 kids. And she came to us when we were doing a Thanksgiving food distribution this last year. And this is the success story I like. She was in a rough patch in her life. She needed food. She needed somebody to help lift her up and strengthen her and be with her. I remember her coming, us praying. I remember the first thing she said is, I can't believe you guys play like pop music in church in the lobby. Like, that's pretty cool. And I was like, hey, if you like the music, good for you. But then to get a text from her last week, and she had missed one of our serve opportunities, and she said, don't ever let me miss those again. I'm supposed to be giving back. That's what it's all about, is to come full circle. Because obviously in life, we don't always want to be the one receiving. We want to be the ones giving. And so when we give to people, they don't know it, but our expectation is we're going to draw them in, funnel them back so that they're giving back to the community as well, because that's what it's all about.
Love it.
Well, I think everyone can see why he was our highlight today of the Church of Action. I mean, he's just not doing enough, really. He's slacking. But all that aside, let's talk about the most important thing. What was Ollie's favorite grilled cheese? And has he tried the Disney grilled cheese we made a few weeks ago?
He has not done the Disneyland grilled cheese. And I would have to say, we did an avocado bacon grilled cheese, and that was definitely his favorite one. A small thing when I laugh about this, you find you have relationship and stuff when the mayor sends you an email about the food to distribute. And she says, "I'm so sorry though, there's no grilled cheese in the lineup of food." So, I don't know how this segment got so popular, but it did. We have another one that's super popular that our other pastor does called Daily Pick Me Up, and she was a former barista. She makes wild coffee, but it's a secret, guys. I want to tell you, if you are in any form of ministry or business, whatever it may be, you don't always promo your product. Do something fun and funny because it's going to get people drawn in. I just want to give this as just kind of a plug for why we do this. We saw over 150% increase in our Sunday service online watch views after we started doing the funny segments. There's a reason we do it. People think we're just trying to do funny grilled cheese. No, I'm trying to get you to come to church on Sunday. You just don't know it. So be encouraged with that.
Well, thank you, Josh, for joining us. We really appreciate your example in the community around us. And I want to say goodbye. Where are you? Bye. Goodbye. I can't see you. There you are. And it's funny you brought up laughter because that's exactly how we ended part 1 of our discussion on godly parenting with guest Sharon Harrison, the importance of laughter in parenting. But we couldn't fit the whole discussion in one show, so here is part 2. Hank, I know that you have been intentional in what you've sought out to teach your children about God. Tell me about that.
So for us, one of the things that we realize is that, we want our values to be normalized. So for example, I didn't grow up in a church setting that believed in women in ministry. That was part of my growth as I went to college and then seminary, and going back actually to the Hebrew, right? Going back to Genesis, the creation, when God created men and women, he created them fully equal, looking through the eyes of Jesus and how Jesus treated and interacted with women, looking back at the early church history and seeing women who were deacons and pastors, and throughout the scripture, women who were prophet. So one of the things for us is that, we want that to be normal. We want our daughters, whenever they walked into a church, if there's not a woman, like in a leadership position, we want them at the very least to think that's weird, So for us, it's being in a community that celebrates that. For us, it's also, we tell them we love them. We tell them that they're special. We tell them that they're children of God, but we also want them to see value in every resource that we have. So one of the intentional things that we do is whatever children's book we use, whatever story we tell, even now our VBS that we use at our church, we want it to be multicultural. We want them to be able to see themselves in the faith, right? We want them to be able to look at the faith and see people who look like them worshiping, and that to be a normalized experience. And I think the last thing too, I would say about intentionality for us is that we know that, whatever values we have aren't necessarily automatically going to be taken by them. I think most parents know that. But I think what we forget though as parents is that we are still who God has chosen to be the first teachers. And even those kids, we mentioned in that Barna survey who rejected the faith, that they grew up in the faith, we still get the first shot. So for us, we hold that very, very seriously. We hold that very intentionally. And that is something we pray for. And that is something, again, that we take as our responsibility to show them a faith. And I think right now it's easier because they're 6 and 4, but we're excited to see where that journey takes us 10 years from now. But just being intentional about who we are and what we believe is the same whether we're at church or we're walking down the street, whether we're talking to our neighbors or talking to someone I've known for 30 years. One of my great joys is when my kids meet people who knew us before they came along, and there's still that love and friendship and relationship, and there's still that connection to spiritual things and to Jesus Christ himself. So yeah, that's some of the things that we really work on is how do we be intentional? How do we make it normal? And holding on to that responsibility that we're the first teachers. And yeah, I mean, they're God's children. God loves them more than we can ever love them. And we love them an awful lot. But yeah, we pray for them. And I think that's the other one, praying with them, but also being intentional to pray for them.
Yeah, for me, I make sure when I correct them and they get upset about the correction naturally, I always try and go back and say, like you, but I want you to know, I still love you. Like I have to correct your behavior. Like that's my job as daddy. I have to do that. So I love that you also acknowledge that there's always love there, because I think in a lot of situations, sometimes it could be misconstrued as that. And It is never that.
Yep.
And that's sort of what you were talking about leads me into, praying for them leads me into the next question is, as you get older and you face challenges with your kids face challenges, how do you deal with that? And how do you parent through those situations? I'm going to go to Sharon because she's probably been parenting through a couple situations in her day.
Well, I think at all times you need to have a listening ear. If you know that they're coming to you and they want you to give them some advice, I think you give them some godly advice. If they're just coming to you because they need to talk it out, I think you need to listen to them. And as they get older, you get older, sometimes all it is make sure you're willing to listen to them. You don't always have to have the answer unless you know it is something that is going to help them. Each child is different. As they get older, you have to have from the very beginning of this thing called parenting, you have to use and operate in unconditional love. And once again, I say, we have the Holy Father as an example on what to do. Sometimes you may know instantly what to do. Those are the times you need to yourself get down on your knees and ask God, what would be the best way for me to help in this situation?
That's excellent. Yes. Thank you, Jesus, for that. We need to get down sometimes and go, how do I do this? Hi, everyone. All right. So Jenny, I want to know about the stories here. What stood out in your parenting experience with your mom?
Oh my goodness, my mom. I could share a lot of stories, but so many good stories. My mother is an incredible mother. She will go out of her way for her kids for anything. I mean, she is just that kind of a mom. But a fun story, I don't know why this one sits with me. I'm sure there's so many stories I could share, but this crazy one sits with me. She used to tell us when we were becoming teenage girls, my sister Jody and I. Now, girls, I know that you're becoming teenagers and you're going to be tempted to smoke because that was, the thing back then. You're going to be tempted to smoke. You're going to want to smoke. And so if you're tempted to smoke, I would just like to ask that you come and smoke with me. Not that my mom smoked. I should probably say this better, but she didn't smoke. She just said, we'll just go down to the drugstore or the store. We'll buy a pack of cigarettes and we will smoke together. That's just a craziest story. But I get it now as a mom. As a mom, I don't want my kids to go off with their friends and do that. She was like, if you want to have that experience, let me put it in a safe zone. Let me put it in a zone. Like recognizing the kids are going to, want to do things. She just wanted to kind of protect us. Now, we never did it. I could not even fathom smoking a cigarette with my mother. But it was just funny that she would even say it. It still makes me laugh. But that example of my mother going above and beyond, let me just tell you, when I was on tour with my first Broadway tour, my husband and I met doing Broadway shows. I lived in New York and did all that kind of fun stuff for a season. And I was touring with a show called Big. And I think we were in Kansas City, I'm pretty sure, somewhere like that. And she lived in Tulsa. It was somewhere that was about a 5-hour drive. She drove all the way there to come see the show, of course. She even drove to see Brian, my husband, when we were engaged, took like 5 hours to go see him. She drove all the way there, saw the show and said, girls, why don't you come back home? Little did I know at the time I was living a little bit rogue at the time, pushing some boundaries. And now I get it. Now she wanted her baby girl home for the night, but I also know there's something about being home in mama's house and just that love to kind of reset. And I want to leave you with this last thing. I love what my mother said in a program I did with her a couple weeks ago. She said, mother is not a noun, it's a verb.
Hank, any challenges that you've faced?
Yeah, I mean, one of the ones for me personally was I was raised by women. So that's always been a blessing. So when I had daughters, I was like, this is easy. I was raised by strong women. I'm good. But I know nothing about raising daughters. I've never been a daughter, So I think that was just an inherent challenge. But my wife, her father has 3 daughters, and I think even that was a little bit of intentionality from God. One of the things that really struck me was, so in theology, you have this thing called substitutionary atonement, and people land on different places. But basically, it's like how is it that one person, one sacrifice is good for all of us, right? Like there's billions of people who are Christians, billions who have been, until Jesus comes back, billions who will be. How does one sacrifice do that? And I think I always just accepted it because I'm like, hey man, Jesus died, that's good enough for me. I'm good. I don't really want to look too much deeper into it. But when I met Shell's parents, one of the things I learned was simply this, because of her, like I was okay. Like it wasn't like you have to win us over. It was just like, oh yeah, she says you're good to me. And I have 2 daughters, they're young, they're 6 and 4. I pray I'm mature and a strong enough Christian that if they bring a boy home, I can say the same thing, right? Because of my love for my daughter, my trust in the person she is, the trust in the faith she has in God and the woman that she's grown up to me. If she thinks, like you should meet us, like this is because of her, you're okay. And in a weird way, it reminded me of like what Jesus did for us in God, right? Because of Jesus, we're okay before the Father. So yeah, so that's one of the things that, I had to just really grow into. And the second one, I would say there's a quick book. It's a book by Michael Gurian. It's called The Wonder of Girls. I actually had to read it in seminary. And the reason I like this book was he really breaks down age by age, what young women go through and just at different stages in life, what's happening and kind of like just neurologically, but then also practically. So now it's not necessarily easy reading. I kind of wish he had a Cliff Notes version where he said, hey, at age 2 to 3, this is what's happening. So this is what it'll look like. Good luck, right? So it's a lot of heavy reading, get through it. But what I appreciated about that book was he was unabashedly saying, as a father, you're not just an example, but like, you need to love your daughter. You need to love her unconditionally. You need to love her and let her see how she is to be loved, And that was eye-opening in this simple way, because at the time I was reading it in seminary, I had a friend who had been struggling, and part of, talking with her, we realized that, she said something that like she never remembered her parent ever saying, I love you, and that stuck with me for years now. Cause I'm like, oh, yeah, they might not believe it, but they will hear it every day. Like, I don't care if we're fighting. I don't care if like, they're just like, get away from me, but they will hear it every day. Like there's going to be we're never going to have to wonder if dad and mom loves us, right? Like we're going to hear it every day. So that's been a practical thing I've even taken on to, is knowing that, and he has a book called The Wonder of Boys, which does the same thing, right? Knowing that your kids are going to go through stages, knowing that neurologically there's a lot going on. But then also knowing that your presence and your intentionality and your consistency is going to be a gift to them. And one of the ways you can gift them is to not just say, oh, we love you, like unconditionally, but to show it. And I appreciate the story Jenny shared about, her mom supporting her and traveling, because that's how my wife's parents were. Like, I mean, they're dairy farmers. They wake up at 3 a.m. and 3 p.m. to go milk, and they never missed a game. Whereas in my high school, because my father was killed in the Civil War in Liberia, raised in a single parent house and, working. So my parent didn't necessarily get to go to my games, right? It's just not something that happened. I think my mom might have went to one event in high school, and I played lots of sports, just because of work stuff. So when I heard that they did that, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's incredible, and that's something that we're going to try to do as well. So yes, I think the practical ministry of presence is sometimes what we forget as parents, like presence is a great gift.
I'm writing down The Wonder of Girls as we speak, since I have 3 of them. And the practical ministry of presence. Hank, I feel like that should be on like a billboard or something. But I want to keep talking about presence now, and the presence parents can have when your child is growing older and maybe going through wilderness periods of their lives. How do you navigate that as a parent? Sharon, what do you think?
I think you recognize, first of all, that there will be some wilderness seasons of your life, in their life, and you can share with them in your own past. You can share with them from stories in the Bible. You can share other true stories that you have heard about or read about, and assure them that this is just a season. That's why it's so important to start early, to assuring them in whatever it may be that of God's faithfulness in their life. because it tends to be when they get in those teen years. I think I mentioned the other day that when I read that when a child is 8 is when they show more tantrums than others. And then when they get into their teen years, then they too are trying to find out now, who are they in relationships with the other kids around them, what their future is going to hold, and also what's the relationship with their parents, what's the relationship with their grandparents. You go back to when you were being raised, when you were that age. What was it that meant so much to you? And as a parent, one of the best things to make sure is that you take time. Don't be. I know that there are parents that both parents have to work, and that's a difficult situation. But still, at some point or another, if you just let them know, I have time for you, and I want to hear your heart, and I want to help you through this. And then as they say that to you, say, oh yeah, I remember when I was 14 and I was struggling. I was dating John Smith, and he wanted to be serious and I didn't want to be serious. So this is what I did. Just give them examples of what was going on in your own life. And I think that they'll see the genuine convictions in your heart. And it's never, never inappropriate to pray together, no matter what age they are. Very important.
Jenny, what have you experienced as your boys have hit in teenage years?
Well, I have great kids. I really genuinely do. But I mean, there have been some saucy times. There have been some lipping off times. And I think I've definitely experienced a little bit of retribution. And, and I recognize that a wilderness time very well may be possible. Now, I know there are people that will say, oh, bad confession, don't say that. I think it's just reality. And I think it's wise to go into things with your eyes wide open as a parent, because some kids need that time in the wilderness to figure themselves out. Sometimes we need to go to the wilderness to figure out, do I believe what I believe because I believe it? Or do I believe what I believe because my pastor or my priest or my parent or, my sibling or whatever told me to believe it? And I think that's what a lot of kids go through. And I think it's healthy. If you look at the Bible is full of examples where God, entertained questions. I mean, Job asked God questions. Abraham asked God questions. God says, as far as, tithing, try me, test me in this. I think it's okay for us to have those questions, because when we ask questions, we get answers. And so we shouldn't be necessarily as parents afraid of the wilderness experience. The wilderness can be a true time of transformation. I actually was just teaching my church, my service I taught on was on Israel and the wilderness experience, and how we shouldn't always be afraid of it. In the wilderness, this was the place where God told them to rest and to have Sabbath. But it was also a time where God tested them. And through that testing, he strengthened them and taught them, certain lessons that kind of went with them. So the kids are kind of learning something in that season, in that period, and in that time. And so to be afraid of it, I think be there for your kids, walk, through things with them, but recognize it's not necessarily a bad thing. I said this quote when I was teaching, that the wilderness is not something that we should, we should be fearful about, but we should be fruitful in the wilderness. And honestly, if you're a praying mom and dad and your kid's going through a wilderness, it can be a fruitful time. Like I said, it can be a time of transformation. It can be a time where, maybe they're in a bad situation, but because of what happens in the wilderness, they can come out better. It can transform to where a young person really looks at God, not as just someone you got to serve, I got to go to church, I got to do this, but there can be that love relationship that happens because of the wilderness, because of those hard times, because of sometimes hitting rock bottom. So of course, as parents, you don't want to see your kids go through that. But if we recognize that it can actually be a healthy place if the Holy Spirit walks through it with them, and that's what we have to be praying for.
Lastly today, Sharon, I wanted to ask you about parenting and counseling in a blended family.
It's a learning process. Definitely a learning process. And I would suggest to anybody that may be walking into that is that you don't have all the answers for it. And you have to give them time. I think my side of the family was more willing to allow this blendedness to happen before Bob's side was. But I had to also recognize they had lost, their mom, and Cindy had been a friend of mine also. So, I just took it differently with each one of them. Personalities are different. This past Mother's Day, Sandra, the oldest daughter, sent me a card that says to my mom, and then she went on and wrote inside, and that's a real breakthrough. But it took a little time to get there. But you don't rush in. You kind of like just gently step in. Sometimes maybe just on your tiptoes. And just because you're somebody's wife does not make it the perfect situation for those children. And I never doubted that they did love me. I always had a sense that there was love there. But here again, I knew them even early on before their mother had passed away. And leave the door open for communication. Let it open so that they can, come to you. You don't necessarily need to go to them. There are times that I will encourage Bob to do something with his kids, and I sit back because I think it's easier received that way. And the only thing I have to prove is that I have the love of God in my heart and unconditional love for each and every one of them and their children. Plain and simple. And it may take some of them longer than it takes others. But I really feel blessed that the blended family, has had the blessing of God upon it. And part of that is what we talked about when we first started, that the heritage that God has allowed us to come from. Because with Jenny and myself, my parents' parents, it goes way back. And it's the same thing with Bob's parents. And Bob's mother and I were very good friends. She lived till she was 90. And we had a very good relationship. But it had nothing to do with any romantic feeling with Bob. But it was already being set up. So as God knew these kind of things. He knew the plans for me, and they were plans for good, not for harm. So it takes people a different amount of time. And I just say, don't rush into anything. Just make sure that your heart is open and that they know that you will have unconditional love for them too.
It's beautiful. What I love about everyone sharing today is that we kind of came from different stages of heritage. Sharon's talked about many generations of Christian heritage in her family, but Hank didn't necessarily have that same heritage. But he has started it in his family now, so anyone can.
The Lord will bless me. He will increase me more and more, me and my children. That's right. And the children's children. And it's definitely being proven. And I love it.
Well, thank you so much to all of you for your wisdom and experience. The various different experiences on this panel, which is why this show is formatted the way it is, because no matter how you come to God, no matter how you come to parenting, no matter how you become a parent through birth or adoption or any other circumstance, God chose you to be those parents. And yes, it comes with responsibility, as we've said, but it should give you peace because God doesn't give you what you can't handle. So He has chosen you to become those parents for a reason. And we hope that this show has helped you become more empowered in raising those children, and that please keep journeying with us at this show, but also keep journeying with your small faith communities just like this show, because there are people that have gone through your experiences before. Get into your churches, get into your communities, because we all want to surround you and help you through those experiences, just like you're doing for your kids. And lastly, here's my new sign off, guys. We're going to do it. God only gives us one life, and he wants you to live it to the fullest. We'll see you next time on The Full Life. Thank you so much for joining us today.